out top 10 of the world's 100 most powerful women by Forbes and the 50 most powerful women in business. Indra Nooyi was #1 on the Fortune's list, and she was #6 on the Forbes list. And the Forbes says the most powerful woman is Michelle Obama.
Well, that's not too surprising, right? You know what's interesting also about Michelle Obama is that, the famous reporter Bob Woodward always does this inside the White House kinds of stories where he interviews people at great length, and the White House tends to give him a lot of access. And he has interviewed President Bush, learned a lot about Laura Bush's involvement in the White House. When he tried to crack Obama about his wife, nothing. President Obama does not really speak about his family life or specifically his wife's influence or involvement in any of the politics. So I think it's interesting that that barrier is still up, with the media.
He likes his privacy. No one can blame him for that. He's got young children.
That's right. This week, we learned of some very important changes happening at the United Nations. India is set to have a non-permanent seat at the Security Council, along with countries like Brazil, Russia, India, China, all being together, the BRIC nations, all being in the Security Council at the same time. Now, we know that there are 5 permanent members and then these rotating non-permanent members of the Security Council. And there are a lot of countries who don't think that's very fair, especially India has said many times over the years, being the most populous democracy in the world, why wouldn't India have a permanent seat? So Obama is planning to go to India in November, and we know that Security Council reform is going to be one of those issues on the table.
Yeah, I mean, of course, when you have a population of 1.2 billion and you're not on the table of UN, it's not fair. Yes. Right. China is there, but India is not there.
And non-permanent member, that's fine. It's the first time in 19 years. 1992 was the last time that India was there on the Security Council. But still, there's a big difference between the permanent members and the non-permanent seats, too.
It has its own hierarchy, and I will say this, UN does some good, even though a lot of Americans really think, from our point of view, it's always give. But, folks, time is coming when we will also be receiving some benefit of helping out the UN and helping out the nations in the UN.
A lot of us love Google, but did you know that Google is involved in the car-making industry? I was really surprised to learn that Google has been testing cars that can be driven without the aid of humans. These cars can go about 1,000 miles and more than 140,000 miles with minimal human intervention. Okay? The project was created by a Google engineer and a co-inventor of Google's Street View. His name is Sebastian Thrun, and he's director of the Stanford Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. Google is not the only company that's involved in this artificial intelligence with automobiles, but it's interesting that they're using Toyota Priuses and Audi TTs with advanced mapping technology. And basically they're saying that these cars run without humans are in many ways a lot safer than human beings who get distracted, and we know their accidents happen. So what they're suggesting is that autonomous cars could double the capacity of our current roads by allowing them to be driven closer together, and because of the decreased likelihood of a crash, they would be more light and energy efficient.
I love it. Yes, you need to separate the drivers from their car. This one does it, and you're right, it will increase the efficiency. Right now, the most annoying thing on the road is when someone thinks that to give a 50-car space ahead of them in a traffic is somehow good. I mean, come on, the road is only so long. There are people standing in the highways because you're doing 50 spaces distance. So I like that. But at one point, I must tell you, some of these GPS systems, they are old. They have the old ideas of where the roads are.
That's true.
And if the new if the roads are new, I wonder if the GPS would have it. I mean, you got a road coming up, and all of a sudden it goes right on the coastline,
Well, apparently they also have kind of sensors as well, so it's not purely from the mapping technology that these cars operate. I was surprised, a little skeptical, but surprised to read that a car that was not powered by a human, not driven by a human, actually went down windy Lombard Street in San Francisco. You know that zigzag road that you see on all the postcards?
Been on it.
No human
driven
operating
on
that
it.
car. Yeah?
I have driven on it, so I know exactly what you mean. But it is a very good idea. All I say is, if you can make the drivers efficient, which is what it does, I'm sure you can still probably touch it and run it a little bit. But at the same time, folks, this will be the greatest thing if Google is successful. They don't make cars. It's just the software they will make it. You know.
And the thing is, it's going to be a long time before we see anything like this available for commercial use, but it's fascinating to see the research that's being done right now and the technology behind it.
There's a profile that Fortune did, Rajat Gupta. I hope some of you know. He worked for McKinsey for 34 years. He got touched by a scandal. Remember, he's not been indicted yet. 21 people have been indicted. 12 have pleaded guilty. This is Raj Ratnam's galleon hedge fund in which he was buying and selling stocks because people will give him tips. Now, Rajat Gupta, folks, he's a graduate of IIT, and he also did his MBA business from Harvard. He got on McKinsey, and he did not quit McKinsey for 34 years. His peers, which is the partners in McKinsey, they elected him to be managing director 3 times, and each time it runs 3-year duration. So for 9 years, he was a managing director. They start with 7,700 partners, and in his tenure of 9 years, he increased the consultants to 33,000.
Wow.
Well, some people accuse him that he really sort of watered down the McKinsey brand name. McKinsey brand name was where they never accepted anything